Hi there, Elevated Planet community. This is John Drew here from Elevated Planet. And today I'm with Derek Savory, who is our UFO expert, experiencer, and healer, and a myriad of other things as well.
At one time, I had a bad experience in the forest, and I got hurt. Got put in hospital. That's when you realise how real this stuff is. Anyway, I remember coming home, and I thought, "My life's over. I ain't going to live much longer." And I sat there and spoke to the universe and said, "Look, I'm on my own. I'm injured. I'm in a bad way. Can you help me?" I could do with meeting a particular lady. So I described exactly the woman I wanted to meet. And amongst it, I said, I could do with one that's a spiritual medium. Because what happened to me frightened me. When you're dealing with stuff that you can't see, like in this case, dark energy, shall I say, that frightened me. When I say it was really frightened me. So anyway, next thing, she's come into my life. You couldn't make it up. And I've had loads of things like that. You know what I mean? I mean, I haven't won any big money on the lottery, stuff like that. But what I mean is, one class is important stuff.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Happens.
I do. And I hear what you're saying. And it is amazing that if you're in the flow, as they call it, you know, in other words, you're leading your life the way you're supposed to be leading your life. And you also understand that you actually are not just this physical vessel, that you are connected to higher energies, but that you have to ask, right? You don't, you know, and it's not just a case of saying like, I want to be a multimillionaire, because it doesn't work like that, you know. But when it's something like that, and I've had synchronicities myself have worked really well for me, and one of them, you know, has led to me talking to you, for instance, right? And the same way I'm connected to Faye, to Aveen, to Shannon, to Trevor, who you all know now, and Liz, and everybody that has been brought together for a reason, because this is the journey we're supposed to be on. And that's why, you know, when you're kind of aligned with your purpose, you're aligned with your purpose. You know, you have, as I see it, a very humble way of expressing yourself. You know, you are, you know, you can see, I can see you have compassion, you have humility. And the fact is that you have those kind of redeeming features, but the universe is going to bring this stuff to you anyway. You're going to get it, because you know you're somebody who wants to be in service to mankind, and I know that, right? And that's one very good reason why the light is in your favor, that the higher consciousness is working in your favor to bring you things, so you can be the person you're supposed to be in the world, and shine your light in the world, if you like.
I mean, I absolutely love what I do. I mean, I've got my own little business that doesn't probably earn any money anymore, but I've got my little shop open on Sunday. That's what I earn my money from. And then the healing and the UFO stuff. I mean, the healing, like, the reason I got into healing was because I got a fear of hospitals. And when I had this stroke, I got a fear of injections, amongst other things. And then I'd learned about healing, and I thought, well, I've got to do something like that in case I have another stroke. Hence why I got into healing. But at the same time this was going on, I obviously got involved with the Rendlesham Forest incident, and everybody and anybody, like you say, the universe, I've probably met, and not just the people involved with the Rendlesham Forest incident. Most of them, if I haven't met them in person, I've spoke to them online.
Mm-hmm.
But the big names that I even a few of the conferences I've helped at, like Colonel Holt conference, I helped organise. About 300 people there. We had Colonel Holt there. We had the MI5s, the spooks, to try and mess things up, and God knows who else turned up. You get it a lot, actually.
Yes,
But
I don't doubt.
As over the years gone on, I've now realised that what you see on TV with the Rendlesham Forest incident, that is the agenda.
Mm.
That's the narrative that you see on TV.
Mm.
You notice that you don't see any civilian witnesses on there.
Mm-hmm.
There was loads of civilian witnesses, but they're left out of it. And
Totally.
also, one of the the main whistleblower, if you like, Larry Warren, they've tried to cut him out of it as well.
Mm. There is so much suppression of information out there. There really is, and quite often it can be quite brutal. I know of a couple of cases, because you mentioned about going up to Sheffield back in the earlier days of this.
Yeah.
And I know back in Sheffield, and I think it was maybe in sometime in the 1960s, and I read the book by his name was Martin Johnson, the same as the rugby player. He was a policeman. One evening, he'd finished his duty, and he was taking the dog for a walk with his fiancée up into one of the parks, and this spaceship suddenly came down, and it was like the dog bolted, ran back to the house, kind of thing, and they were kind of so frightened, and it was this multicolored thing going on. It was seen by a lot of people. It was reported in the newspaper the next day. I don't know how extensively it was reported, but he, went and reported it back at the police station. He said, "Oh, this is what happened," and there was not, as I say, there were probably thousands of people who actually witnessed this. And a couple of days later, there's a visit from the men from the ministry who turn up to interview him, and they interview him, and they take what he has to say into account, and they tell him, on no account can you ever repeat this again. No account can you. And he said, well, can you explain to me what it was? And he said, well, this is, you just got to forget everything you ever knew about this. But they couldn't provide any explanation for it. And so there was a bit of suppression of information. There was also another fellow, I don't know whether this is the one that you're talking about, because he was a police officer as well in Yorkshire. This was not the Sheffield incident. It may be the Tony Dodds one, but it was, again, when they were working overnight on, doing the night shift, and they got some curious calls had come in about the fact that some cows had gone missing from a farmer's field. And the cows ultimately reappeared on a sports field, which was surrounded by a fence that they couldn't possibly have got into. And it was like a long way away from the field they first started off on. And he dropped off the fellow policeman he was with. He dropped off at 5 a.m, and he was driving back, and then this spaceship just stopped in front of his car, and he gets out and he has a look at it. Now, I won't remember the details exactly correct, but I know he's on record. He's spoken about this numerous times, but he kind of he recounted it. So he went back and he told his story, he reported it and everything like that he was supposed to do. And of course he gets ridiculed for it. And that was going to be part of the, and he wasn't even worried about the fact he got ridiculed for it. But again, he got interviewed on this one, and he got kind of really a little bit ripped to shreds about this. And all he was doing was telling the truth. And then a couple of days later, the man from the ministry again, who had interviewed him and told him never to talk about it and all this, the desk sergeant said to him, that man came up again today and he wanted to get access to the locker rooms. And they thought this was very strange. So they went down into the locker rooms and they opened up the locker of the policeman who'd seen the UFO, and they'd planted in it drugs and another policeman's helmet. And they realized, him and the desk sergeant realized, that this was a setup. So he flushed the drugs away, and he removed the helmet and put it somewhere completely different because it was nothing to do with him. And then 15 minutes later, the superintendent and a whole barrage of people came into the locker room, opened his locker, obviously to find this stuff that had been planted, and realized it wasn't there, and they got very angry about it. But he was a man with a family who would have gone to prison had they not intervened. He would have gone to prison for a drugs offense, because as a policeman, it would have been treated very severely. It would have destroyed his life. And that was the level of suppression. And I know a lot worse than that has happened as well. I know that people have been assassinated, people have been threatened, all sorts of things over the last few decades, just to keep a lid on this stuff. So that one was the Tony Dodds then, yeah?
Well, you're saying that I've got a little story to tell you.
Go on.
When we had the Colonel Holt conference, Colonel Holt was talking this and that, and he done his talk, and halfway through it, the MC, for whatever reason, called a tea break. I thought, what are you doing? Do you know what I mean? Anyway, so Colonel Holt's come off the stage, and as he's come off, I said to my son, right, stand next to Colonel Holt, don't let anybody get near him.
Mm.
And then some other fellas got up on the stage. Who the frig's that? So I got up on stage and said, fella, what are you doing up here? He said, I'm just looking around. I was looking off the stage, you know what I mean? As we're coming down the stage with this older fella, Colonel Holt turns around. He said, do you know who that is? I said, no. He said, that's Colonel Park Sims. I said, hang on a minute, you're telling me there's another full here, that's Colonel Park Sims. He said, he was at Bentwater as long as what I was. He said, he was based here 8 years. I said, really? He said, yeah. So anyway, that was sort of that. I'm thinking, that's strange. Why is there another? And why I'm looking at that, then one of your spooks come past and unplugged the whole amplifier that's there so that to mess up the sound system. That's what they did. They were playing games with us. Happens a lot with UFO things, yeah?
Mm.
Anyway, a bit later on, Brenda Butler's gone up on stage to do her talk, and she's talking about the various witnesses that she'd got that had made statements in 1980 to the UFO event. And one of them was a young lad, and she read about this young lad who'd made a statement. He was part of one of the military families, and he didn't want to say who he was at that point because he didn't want to get his family into trouble because they were military people. He done one statement, and then he said, I'm going off to America for a couple of weeks, come back home to America, then I'll be back and I'll do a full, longer statement. Well, anyway, so there's gone back to America, young lad, 16, 17, whatever, and then got murdered. Wrong place, wrong time, apparently, I don't know. Anyway, Brenda's doing this talk, and when she'd finished, she's come down off stage and sat next to me. Who comes walking over? Colonel Park Sims. He said, this lad, he said, that was my son. He said, you're telling me that he's made a statement? She said, yeah. So Brenda's give him the statement so he could see the handwriting and that. He said, I can't believe it. He said, I never knew my son I didn't know my son see anything. Then I make a statement. And it was his son. So now he's thinking, was it coincidence that his son got murdered when he went back to America? And he was gobsmacked. He was absolutely stopped him in his tracks. Especially me as well, because I'm thinking, he was there. The chance of him Brenda doing a talk, because she was reading out, there were several statements she read out to different people, but one happened to be a colonel's son.
Right.
Do you understand? So you can see how things are going. You think, seriously, the cover-up is unbelievable.
The cover-up is, well, yeah. And I know that, for instance, John F. Kennedy, the reason he was assassinated was because he wanted to divulge what the US really knew at a government level, which is about the interaction they'd already had for decades with alien beings. In fact, there'd been negotiations with them. They'd swapped information. They'd done so much. They'd investigated time travel and various other things. He wanted to start the process of disclosure. And this, obviously, the CIA, the FBI, but more importantly, the dark underbelly of the government that nobody ever sees and knows anything about would not stand for it. So it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald who shot him. I mean, I think they can pretty much prove that. And it wasn't just him, Marilyn Monroe, because she would been told by the Kennedy brothers the stuff that they wanted to divulge. In fact, I think she was assassinated before the Kennedys. It's amazing. Life is cheap when it comes to these things. Now, personally, I don't feel too much under threat right now. I think the time has come that, we can have these discussions now. And
we can talk about it. And I think that a large section of the universe is on our side because things are put in place for us.